Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Spriggan Mark II, a Japanese CD game released by Compile in 1992 for the PC Engine, and I'm playing this game in a Core Graphics Mini. I think the worst part about this game for me is that it's in Japanese and there's so much of it in Japanese. There's spoken audio in the game, and there's also tons of text. There's so much text in this game that it kinda slows the game down. At least for me it does. I'm sure if I could read Japanese this would probably be more interesting. It looks like it would be exciting, but not knowing what's being said, I don't know anything about the story that's happening here, so I kind of have to fast forward through everything. I think it would be a totally different feeling if I knew what was being said. There is some sort of a war going on, there are players in this war, and things are happening. I have no idea. All I do is push a button and shoot stuff. Aside from this, the graphics are pretty great for this game, it's a decent shooter, and the gameplay is really solid. It's an anime-based science fiction shooter, and the art and design are reminiscent of the Robotech or Macross series from the 80s. Basically. They're not the exact same, of course, but immediately I saw enough similarities where the connection was made pretty darn fast for me. You pilot this cool-looking mech robot, which is just a large robot with guns. It's got missiles and stuff like that. You need to stay alive, and you dodge things and shoot everything on screen. Like I said, there's backstory here, I'm sure of it, but it's all in Japanese, so I have no idea. There's just no translation for it, at least not on this system. I was also playing for a while before I realized you actually had alternate weapon choices. If you press the select button, you can scroll through your different options. You can activate, at least on the first level, a shoulder cannon with different types of missiles. Some have tracking, and one explodes in this interesting little spread. Also, you can activate this lightsaber type of weapon, and you can cut through enemies. I have to say, the way that some enemies come after you in different areas, the way that the stages are designed, and the volume of enemies, these varied weapons definitely have their place. There are some areas that clearly benefit from one weapon over another. Also, every level or so you actually get to switch to a new mech. Once again, I'm sure there's a story to it, because usually there are graphics in between levels that you get to see. The mech is going to be roughly the same size, it's going to look different, and it'll have different firepower capabilities. It's just added variety. If I knew what they were saying, I would probably appreciate it even more. There are lots of enemies and objects to shoot at on screen, and eventually, from time to time, you get assistance from this other computer-controlled mech. It's not like it's an amazing assist, but it's nice to have at least a little bit of extra firepower for sure. The controller buttons operate just a little different than I would expect. The number 2 button fires your cannons, and the number 1 button will flip your direction. This is not something that I see very often in games, if ever. Usually you're just flying in one direction, whatever direction that the map is moving. And you're just worrying about, usually, what's in front of you. Here, you can roam all the way around the screen, even though there's an overall direction of the level. You can flip your direction back and forth, so you can suddenly start aiming behind you. It makes it so you can fly around enemies if you need to, and you can shoot at them from behind. Maybe not so useful on the first level, but definitely on subsequent levels this becomes really handy. It's useful to get around certain types of fire and certain types of enemy waves. Sometimes the enemies push you back and you just need to get out of the way. Sometimes it's you going to the front or the right of the screen and flipping it around and just clearing the screen from that side. Bosses are these large robotic machinations of some kind, as you would expect, and when you find one you're going to learn what it's like to be disappointed with a story you're not going to understand. There are animated cutscenes in between the levels, and these show you moving to a new destination, or maybe working on a new mech in between battles. It looks great, but with only graphics to look at, all I can really do is sort of forward through the next fight. It's a definite miss. I don't know if there's an official translation available out there. I don't think there is, but I did a little bit of searching, and I did see that at least somewhere out there, there's some sort of a potential fan translation project somewhere. I don't know if this was ever completed, but this is a mini console, and it's not something that is even currently adjustable on this system. So, if there is a translation out there, I'm sure it would have to be emulated somewhere. You have shields, and one particularly great thing about having shields is that your shields will actually recharge if you don't get hit for a few seconds, which is something that encourages you to be extra careful and to try to dodge as much as you can. There are different backgrounds for each level, and you'll get to fly around a planet, you'll get to be in orbit, you'll get to be in outer space, and I'm sure there's a good reason to the story as to what area you're moving to and why, but once again, I have no idea what that might mean. Also, it's a pretty long game. I mean, I haven't gotten that far in it, only a couple of levels, but I have looked at some long plays online, and this one clocks in at almost an hour and a half, it seems. I think that's really long for a shooter, so pretty decent length for a game, I guess. Overall, I think this is a pretty decent shooter. It's got some variety to it in terms of weapons that you get. You get to switch your mechs every level or so, and even the specialty weapons that you have can shift a little bit. I think that's pretty neat. Also, the length of it makes it something you can play for a long time, which is pretty great. Well, that's all I have for Spriggan Mark II for the PC Engine. Thanks for giving this one a watch, and I'll catch you next time.